Welcome back, super friends. Today we are going to be reviewing for our Unit 5 division quiz that we'll be taking this week. We will go over all the questions that you'll be seeing, and then we will go ahead and just get that little bit of review in before we actually take our quiz. So you will need your math notebook or folder, a pencil to write with, and don't forget that super brain of yours. Stay tuned for the video. All right, super friends, let's get started on doing our Unit 5 division review. We are going to solve our first question, which is a simple division question. It says 2,752 divided by 16. Of course, what we know to do for our question number one, what we know to do is to set up our house. That part's the easy part. Fill in the house. Also another part that's easy. And then the visitor, awesome. Now we will get our, what's that? Multiples. This is a step that I teach so that we can do this easily for us. So 16 times 1 is 16. If I double that, I'm doing 16 plus 16. That will give me 12. Regroup. That's 32. So over here, it is going to be 32. Again, if we were to be adding 32 plus 16, that gives me 8, that gives me 4, so then that would be a 48. Add 16 again to that. You can see the pattern, we're just adding 16 to get our next thing. 8 plus 6, that would be 14. Regroup. 1 plus 4 plus 1 is 6. So that will give us 64. And I'm going to do maybe one more factor, or one more multiple, and then I'll stop. 6 plus 4 is 10. Regroup. That will be 8. So the last multiple I have here is 80, and I'm going to write it there. Now, of course, if we need more, I know how to get more. I'm just adding 16 to my green number, so I can go ahead and get started. Now, when we're going back to our house, we're basically trying to see how many 16s can I get out of that big number in the house. That's all that we're doing. That's why we get our multiples. That's why we see, okay, 16 times what equals what, so that we can subtract it. So starting, let's look at our first number, 16 times 2. Not 16 times 2, sorry. 16 out of 2. Can I get any 16s out of the number 2? I hope you can tell that you cannot, because you will run out of fingers to use. If you only have 2 fingers and you're trying to get 16 out of that, you can't. So my first number up top is going to be 0, because I cannot get any 16s out of that number 2. 0 times 16 equals 0. I'm going to subtract it from the 2 that I was trying to get the 16s out of. That ends up being a 2, and I bring down the next number, which is a 7. Now, do I see any number that's close to 27 without going past 27 that I can get a 16 out of? If I were you, I would see that the highest number that I can get is a 16, because if I go to 32, that's too big. So 16, what factor is that? That's my first one. So I'm going to put the 1 on top of the 7, because that's just the next place that I would put that number. And 1 times 16 equals 16. I will subtract that out. 7 minus 6 equals 1. And then 2 minus 1 equals 1. All right, now my next step, anytime that I'm subtracting, the next step is to bring down the next number. So now I have 115. Uh-oh, it looks like we need to get more factors going so that we can try to find how many 16s we can get out of 115. So I'm going to add another 16 to this 80 over here. So that will give me 96, and that would be the next factor, or the next multiple that I'm dealing with. And again, I'm trying to get as close to 115 as possible. So let's go ahead and add another 16 to this 96. That will give me 12. Regroup. That will give me 11. Ooh, this one's promising. So I have 112 here. Let's do one more just to be on the safe side, and then we can stop there. Plus another 16. That gives me 8, that gives me 2, that gives me 1. So 128 is the last multiple that I'm dealing with here. All right, so looking at that 115, what was the closest number that we can get to 115 without going over? It was 112. Now, which multiple is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, our 7th multiple. So I'm going to put the 7 up top, and it's going to go right after the one that I was dealing with. Now, 16 times 7, I like to circle my multiples that I'm going to use so I don't forget what I'm subtracting. So that 16 times 7 is the number that I circled, which is 112. So let's subtract out 112. 5 minus 2 equals 3. And then 1 minus 1 is 0, 1 minus 1 is 0. So I have my 3, and I do see that there is another number for us to bring down, which is that 2. That's there. So now I have 32. Do I see 32 in my multiples or any number closest to it? Ding, ding, ding. Yes, I do. I see that 32 is the second multiple. So I'm going to put the 2 right after the 7. And then I'm going to subtract out that 16 times 2, which is 32. So subtract that out. What do I get? 0. There's nothing else to divide. There's nothing else to subtract. We're all done. Our answer is what we have up top, which is 172. So 2,752 divided by 16 equals our 172, and that's how we got it. All right, super friends, our second question that we're going to do today says each of the 352 guests attending the Donuts with Dads gets a donut. Donuts come in packages of 12. How many packages, this is our question, how many packages are needed so that there are enough donuts for every guest? So we did a problem like this already. Let's do this again. So what we need to do is we're going to divide, obviously. We're taking our guess and dividing it by the packages of 12 donuts to see how many packages we need. So let's start our house. I have my 352 here. Then I have my 12 donuts per package. Again, Mistress loves to get her multiples going, so let's get some multiples going. Multiples. And we're doing our 12s. We should be familiar with our 12s by now. So I have 12 times 1, that's obviously 12. If I double 12, that's 24. Add another 12 to that is 36. Add another 12 to that, 48. Add another 12 to that, that is 60. If I add one more 12 to that, that's 72. Add another 12 to that, that's 84. Add one more 12 to that, 96. Add 12 to that, 108. Add 12 to that one, 120. Add one more 12, that's 132. And my last 12 that I'm going to add is 144. Now, of course, if I need to keep going, I can keep going. I'll just add another 12 to the 144 and get my answer that way. So let's just get started. So again, we're going back to our divisor. So I have 12. How many 12s can I get out of the number 3? That is a big fat 0 because 12 is too big. So what I do is do 0 times 12, that equals 0, subtract it from the 3 that I was trying to divide. Now I have 3 minus 0, that equals 3. What do I do next? Bring down the next number in the sequence, which is the 5. Now, what is the biggest number in my multiples that I can get that won't pass 35? Okay, that one here is 24. And which multiple is that? It's the second multiple. So I'm going to do 12 times 2, and that gives me my 24 that I'm going to subtract. Now I have 5 minus 4 equals 1. 3 minus 2 equals 1. Then what do I do next? Bring down the next number in the sequence, which is 2. So now I have 112. Okay, which is the next multiple that will get us something close to 112 without passing it? So I'm stuck between 108 and 120. 120 would go past the 112, so that won't work. So obviously we're having 108. And which factor is that one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It is our 9th factor. So that 9 goes right after the 2. And 9 times 12, we just circled it, equals 108. So let's subtract that out. 2 minus 8. Can I do that? No way, Jose. Let's borrow from the 1 in the tens place, turn it into 0, and then that 2 turns into a 12. So 12 minus 8, that is going to give me a 4. So I put 4 here. 0 minus 0 is 0, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So my remainder here is going to be a 4. So that means that I can get 29 packages, and I will have 4 donuts remaining, or 4 people without donuts, basically. So, sorry, 4 people without donuts. So what does that mean that I need to do with these packages? If I'm running out and I need to get more packages, what should I do? Add one more. So I'm going to do 29 plus one more package, and that will equal 30 packages. So right now I need 30 packages of donuts. And that is because we would have people left over without a donut, and we don't want that. We would rather us purchase more packages so that people can actually have the donuts, rather than us purchasing too little of the packages and then people don't get a donut because it's required. So our answer is 30. Let's move on to the next question. All right, you guys, question number 3. Mrs. Elf has 432 students. When she separates the students into groups of 24, so she's separating, there's that word separates. That means we're dividing. When she separates the students into groups of 24, she has 18 groups of students. How many groups of students would Mrs. Elf have if she separated them into groups of 16 instead? All right, we've done a problem like this before. Let's get our handy dandy equations ready. So right now it's saying that Mrs. Elf has 432 students. This time they gave us the answer. Before it didn't. So this time our process of solving is going to be easier because we already have that. We labeled this A in our last video with our problems. So now this A, we already have the A. So we're taking the amount that Mrs. Elf has. She has 432 students, and she separated, that means divide. So let's put our division side. She separated the students into groups of 24. So since she did that, she ended up with 18 groups. Awesome. So everything we have is here. Now they're saying if she separated it into 6 groups of 16 instead, what will be her answer? So she's taking her same A, 432, but she's going to separate them into 16 instead of the 24. Now we're trying to see, what is that answer going to give us? So this is just a one-step problem now. We're just trying to figure out what is that question mark. So 432 divided by 16 is what we're solving. So let's go ahead and get our house. 432 lives there. 16 is the visitor. Let's get our handy dandy multiples. Didn't we do multiples of 16 before? Let's see if we can remember them. Multiples. So I have 16, 32. I definitely am not going to remember them, so I'm going to make sure I add them. So I know this one is, 48. I will have to add that one. So let Miss Joyce get to adding. 16 plus 48. Oh, I should have known that was 64. How could I forget? 64. Another 16 added to that is going to give me 80. How could I forget that one? I can remember myself writing these. So the 80, and then I'm going to keep going. Should I keep going? I think I feel good right here. Let's stop at 80. Of course, if we need to keep going, we're not afraid. We know how to do that. So let's get started with our division. So now I have my 16 divided by, I'm going to figure out how many 16s can I get out of my 432. So let's look at the first number, the 4. Can I get any 16s out of 4? Obviously not, Miss Choice. That's going to give you a 0 because the 16 is too big. So let's do 16 times 0. Subtract it out from the 4. 4 minus 0 is 4. What's our next step? Bring down the 3. Okay, now we have 43. Which multiple gives us a number that's close to 43 but without going past 43? So obviously it's going to be our 32 because the 48 is too big. So 32, I circled it. That looks like my second multiple. So 2 times 16 equals 32. Let's subtract it out. 3 minus 2 is 1. 4 minus 3 is 1. What do I do next? Bring down my last number. So now I have 112. Okay, here's a time where I go ahead and add more of my 16 multiples so I can get a number that's close to 112, if not 112. So the next number after 80 would be 96, because I'm just adding 16 to 80. And let's see what would be the next one after that. If I add 16 to 96, that is going to give me 12. Regroup, that's 1. Ooh, that's going to be 112. I like when that happens. So now I have 112. And that's our factor that we were looking for, isn't it? So let's go ahead and circle it, because that's the one that we wanted. Let's see which multiple that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It is our 7th multiple, and we subtract it out and we get our 112. That is 0. There's nothing else to bring down. There's no remainders, so our answer is 27. Mrs. Elf would get 27. We did it. That was way more simple once it gives us our A number, right? Let's move on to the next problem. All right, so question number 4 says, remember this little area model looking thing is our area model that we use for our partial quotients. So let's read what the problem says. The area model below shows a way to solve 7,794 divided by 18 using place value, which is what we do when we do partial quotients. The 3 partial quotients missing from the model represent the hundreds, tens, and ones. To find the quotient, the 3 partial quotients are added together. What is the quotient? So they're just saying if we add up these numbers, what's the quotient that it gives us? That's all that they're asking for. So if I were you, I would start my division myself, or you can work backwards and do multiplication. If we did multiplication, we would be trying to figure out, okay, 18 times what? 18 times what gives me 700 or 7,200? I don't know that offhand, but what can I do? Get my multiples, right? Let's do some multiples. My multiples of 18. So I have 18. What would be the next one? Let's double it. That's 6. Regroup, 36. So then I get 36 next door. And then guess what I'm going to do again is add my 18 to that 36. That will be 14. Regroup, that's 54. Now my next multiple is 54. What should I do to that? 54. Add it. Hooray. I'm basically looking for 72, because I know that whatever that is, I can just attach 2 zeros to that, and that will give me that 7,200 that I'm looking for. So add 18. That is going to give me 2. Regroup, 72. Oh, there's a 72 we were looking for. All right, 72 right here. All right, cool. Any other ones that I need to get? Nope, because the other ones are 54. All right, cool. So now we have our 72 that we were looking for. Now, which factor or which multiple is that 72? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 4th, right? So we're going to put a 4 here. And then remember, how many zeros do we have here? 1, 2. So I need to put 2 zeros here. So our first number is 400. Automatically, we're done. Now let's look at the second box. The second box here says 540. Okay, which factor gives me, or which multiple gives me the 54 that I was looking for? 1, 2, 3, the third one. So I would be putting a 3 right here. And then it needs 1 0 attached, right? Because of the 1 0 that I have in my box. So 1 0. So that multiple, or that partial quotient, is 30. And lastly, what is our last partial quotient that's going to give us 54? We just did that. It's our third multiple. So we're going to put a 3 here. Is there any zeros that we need in here? Nope, because there's no zeros in the box that I just circled. So there's our answer. What do we do next? Add them all together. 400 plus 30 plus 3. What does that give us? 433. There we go. Miss Choice, what if I don't like that way? That's A-okay. I'm going to show you another way to solve it, which that next way to solve it is just going to be to divide regularly. So we're going to get our 794, 18 as our divisor. And let's get started with our division. Can I get any 18s out of the number 7? Of course not. So make a 0, subtract out the 0, and I get 7, bring down the next 7. What's the highest number I can get? It's that 72. So the 4 goes up top. 4 times 18 equals 72. Subtract it, I get 5. Bring down the 9. What's the next number that we can get that does not go past the 59? Obviously that 54. So that is the 1, 2, 3, the third multiple. 3 times 18 is 54. Subtract it out. I get 5 here. What do I do next? Drop down the last 4. Oh, there's that 54 again. What number was that I needed? It's the third multiple. Subtract out the 54 again, and I am left with 0. So the answer that we needed was 433, just like we got before. Thank goodness for those multiples. That's why I like to get them, so they make our lives so much simpler. So the answer that we were looking for was 433. All right, let's go on to the next problem. All right, friends, so I skipped question number 5 and I went to question number 6, only because number 5 was just another simple division problem that you can solve on your own. And let's go to this word problem. Boca Raton Middle School Drama Club is producing a play. The play will be shown a total of 14 times. All of the shows have the same number of tickets available. There are 5,740 tickets in total. How many tickets are available for one show? Okay, this one's simple. We're simply going to take the total amount of tickets that we have and divide it by the total number of times the show can go for. So we're going to do tickets, or total tickets. You know my favorite way to say tickets is ticks. Total tickets divided by number of shows. And that will give us our answer that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and plug these numbers in. So that was our 5,740 divided by 14. Let's get started. Over to the side, I'm making my house. 5,740 divided by 14. Our handy dandy multiples. Multiples. All right. 14. If I double it, 28. If I triple it, what do I get? Let's start tripling. Plus 14 to regroup, that's 42. So that gives us 42. Then I'm going to add another 14 to that. If I add another 14 to that, I get 656. Okay, so I'm going to get 56. Let's add another 14 to that one. And I am going to get what? 0, regroup, 70. So I'm getting 70. I'm going to write my 70 below because I don't want to run out of space. I'm going to do one more. If I do 70 plus 14, that's going to give me 84. If I do 84, I did say one more, but let's do one more after this. 84 plus 14, this will be the last one that we do. That would be 98. All right, so 98 is the last one that we're dealing with. If there's any more that we need to do, of course, we know we'll just add. So let's get started with our division. How many 14s can I get out of the number 5? That would be a big fat 0, Miss Choice, because 14 is bigger than 5. That won't work. So I subtract out my 0 because 14 times 0 equals 0. 5 minus 0 is 5. Bring down the 7. Now I have 57. What is the closest multiple that I have here that will get me under the 57 or at the 57? The only closest one is the 56, and that is our 1, 2, 3, fourth multiple. So I have 4 times 14, that is 56. I'm going to subtract it out. That is going to give me a 1. Bring down the next number, which is 4. Ooh, now we have 14. That one's easy. That's just the first multiple, right? So 1 goes on top, and then I subtract out 14. That's 0. Bring down the last 0. How many 14s can I get out of 0, guys? 0 of them. So then 0 times 14 equals 0. Subtract it out, get 0. There's nothing left. There's no remainder. My answer is 410. So the answer that I'm looking for was 410 tickets. And that would be what I answer, or what I type in is 410. All right, guys, let's go on to the next problem. All right, guys, last problem that we'll do together is a number divided by 22 has a quotient of 37 with a remainder of 7. What is the number? Okay, so I'm dividing. That obviously means dividing by 22, and then a number. Remember, we like to call it n if it's a number. And then the quotient means equal. 37, remainder 7. All right, let's get to work. N divided by 22 equals 37, remainder 7. Now, since we're trying to find that n, remember, with this case, because the n is our dividend, since we're missing the dividend, we are going to do the inverse, which means I'm changing that division into multiplication, and the things I'm multiplying are my divisor and my quotient. And this is my remainder. I'm not going to use my remainder yet. So let's take our divisor, which is 22, and multiply it by the quotient, 37. Ooh, bringing it back to simple 4th grade multiplication. I love it. Let's get started. So my 20 plus 2 multiplied by my 30 plus 7. Let's go. So 3 times 2 is 6. How many zeros should I bring over? 2 of them is choice. Then I have 2 times 7 is 14. How many zeros? Just 1. 3 times 2 is 6. How many zeros? Just 1. And then 2 times 7 is 14. What do I do next? Of course, we're going to add them all together. So I'm going to get my 60, my 14, and my 140, and my 600. Okay. Now I get 4 in the ones place. I get 11 in the tens place, and I get 8 in the hundreds place. Now, this is the part where we get a little tricky because we're not done. So we did the reciprocal, or not reciprocal, sorry, we did the inverse, and that gave us that 814, but now we have to take that remainder and add it. So we're adding the remainder now. So we're taking that remainder and adding it. That was just 7. So let's add 7 to this. And what do we get total? We get 821. So our total dividend, dividend, or letter N, as we were calling it, is going to be our 821. And that is the number that we're needing. So right here would be 821.